Take a quick look around the animal kingdom, and you'll notice that green is absolutely everywhere. Parrots are green, tree frogs are green, snakes, lizards, beetles, caterpillars, even some fish. Green shows up over and over, all across the living world. But now try to name a single green mammal. Go ahead. A green dog? A green deer? A green cat? You can't think of one because there isn't one. In all the thousands of mammal species on Earth, not a single one grows green fur. Not one. So what's going on here? Why is an entire color, a color nature clearly loves, completely locked off from half the animal kingdom? The answer turns out to be part chemistry, part deep evolutionary history. And it says something surprising about where we mammals actually came from. Let's start with the obvious question. Why can't a mammal just be green? And to answer that, you first have to understand something most people never think about: how color in animals is actually made. Because it turns out there are two completely different ways to make a color, and that difference is the whole key to this mystery. The first way is pigment. A pigment is a molecule that soaks up some colors of light and bounces the rest back to your eye. The leftover light you see is the color. Your hair, your skin, a brown dog, a black cat, all of it is colored by pigments. And here's the crucial part. Mammal fur is colored by basically one family of pigment, called melanin. And melanin really only comes in two flavors. One gives you black and brown. The other gives you red, orange, and a kind of yellowish tan. And that's it. That is the entire mammal paint set. Blacks, browns, reds, yellows, and every mix in between. Notice what is completely missing from that list. There is no green. There is no blue. Mammals simply never evolved a green pigment to put in their hair. Okay, but that raises an even better question. Green pigments do exist in nature. Plants are packed with chlorophyll. Some frogs and birds use a pigment called biliverdin to turn green or blue. So why didn't mammals just borrow one of those? And the answer is that your hair is a surprisingly difficult place to put a color. A strand of hair is essentially dead. It's made of a tough protein called keratin, and the only thing the body can load into it, as it grows, is melanin. The machinery just isn't there to pipe a delicate green pigment into every single hair. So that whole route to green was closed off a long time ago. But here's where it gets really interesting, because pigment isn't even how most green animals make their green. Think about that bright, shimmering green on a beetle's shell, or a hummingbird's feathers, or a peacock. A lot of those colors aren't pigment at all. There's something called structural color. Instead of a molecule absorbing light, the surface itself is built out of microscopic layers and ridges, structures smaller than a wavelength of light. And those tiny structures bend and bounce and interfere with light in just the right way to produce intense greens and blues. It's the same reason a soap bubble shimmers with color, even though the soap has no pigment in it at all. In fact, almost every blue animal you have ever seen, and a huge number of the green ones, are using structural color, not pigment. And this is the second wall that mammals slam straight into. Structural color needs precise, intricate, microscopic architecture. Feathers can do it. Butterfly scales can do it. Beetle shells can do it. But a mammal hair is just a simple tube of keratin. It does not have the fine, layered nanostructure you would need to bend light into green. So mammals are actually locked out twice. They have no green pigment, and their fur can't do the structural color trick either. Both doors to green are bolted shut. Now, at this point you might be thinking, wait, what about the sloth? Sloths look kind of green. And you'd be right, they often do. But the sloth is the exception that perfectly proves the rule, because that green isn't the sloth at all. A sloth moves so slowly and lives in such a damp rainforest that tiny algae actually grow in its fur. Its hair even has special cracks and grooves that trap water and give the algae a place to live. So the sloth isn't making green. It's basically a slow-moving garden wearing a coat of living plants. It's borrowing its green from an organism that figured out color hundreds of millions of years before any mammal existed. Take the algae away, and underneath, the sloth is just brown. The one famous green mammal is cheating. So that's the chemistry. Mammals are chemically and structurally boxed out of green. But that leads to the deepest question of all. Evolution is endlessly inventive. It built echolocation and venom and eyes and flight. If green was truly useful for a mammal, you'd think evolution would have found some way, any way, to get there. So maybe the real question isn't why mammals can't be green. Maybe it's why they never really needed to be. And for that, you have to rewind the clock more than 100 million years, back to the age of the dinosaurs. Because the earliest mammals lived in that world as tiny, timid creatures, mostly the size of a mouse or a shrew. And to survive alongside giant predators, they did the sensible thing. They came out at night. For a huge stretch of our history, mammals were nocturnal. We were creatures of the dark. And think about what that means for color. In the dark, being bright green buys you absolutely nothing. There's no sunlight to reflect, no green leaves to blend into. What actually helps at night is being dark, dull, and hard to spot. Browns and grays and blacks. Exactly the colors melanin is so good at making. There's a second clue hiding in your own eyes. Most mammals are what's called dichromatic. They see the world with only 2 types of color receptor, instead of 3. To a typical mammal, like a dog, red and green look almost the same, kind of a muddy yellow-brown. So even if a mammal had somehow turned green, most other mammals wouldn't really see it as green anyway. Green camouflage, against predators who can't even distinguish green, is close to pointless. Plain brown already does the job perfectly well against tree bark, dirt, and dry grass. So evolution had no real reason to chase green. The pressure was never there. So could a truly green mammal ever evolve? Almost certainly not on its own. It would have to invent an entirely new pigment from scratch, or grow a brand new microscopic structure into its hair, 2 enormous evolutionary leaps with no easy stepping stones along the way, all to gain a color it mostly doesn't need and many mammals can't even see. Nature just has no reason to bother. And honestly, that's the part I find beautiful. The total absence of green mammals isn't some random gap. It's a fingerprint. It's a clue written across every brown deer and gray wolf and black cat alive today that points straight back to our origins. We are the descendants of small, nervous, nocturnal survivors who scurried through the dark while dinosaurs ruled the day. And we are still, every one of us, painted in the same earthy melanin colors of those ancient creatures of the night. So the next time you spot a brilliant green parrot or a tiny green frog, and then you look at your very brown dog, you'll understand exactly why one of them got to be green, and the other never will. And now, when somebody asks you why there are no green mammals, well, then you'll know.